Hey, long time no speak. It's your girl Erica, and I'm back with another episode. In this episode, I want to get a little real with you all. Real with why I've been absent. Real about what's going on in life. Real about who I am as a person. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Eriqua Martin. I am a proud mother of one fantastic little boy, a junior at Fisk University, a dual major in English and psychology, and hopefully soon a law student. I am approaching my senior year in college, and I kind of really have my eyes set on going to law school, not just for this reason, but for many reasons. This just so happened to be a driving force. So a little bit about me. If you don't know, I grew up here in Nashville, in a little subset called Bordeaux. My family really grew up near the Fisk University campus. I went to church at Pleasant Green Missionary Baptist Church, and I still attend there faithfully, although it's not as often as I would like. I'm working on that. Always know that God is in my corner, and church is wherever you make it. My grandfather owned a shop, a barber shop, right across the street from Fisk, in the same building as the florist. Spent a lot of time there growing up. Spent a lot of time on campus growing up. I went to summer camp at Fisk University with Gusto. I went to high school at Martin Luther King Jr. Academic Magnet of Health and Sciences at the historic Pearl High School. And yes, that was absolutely necessary to say the whole name, because you must have some respect for Martin Luther King Jr. Academic Magnet for the Health and Sciences at the historic Pearl High. I initially chose Fisk way before I knew it was time for me to choose college. My grandmother graduated from Fisk in 1977. She graduated with a degree in early childhood education, and she also graduated with my dad, who was 3 at the time. My grandmother was a very prominent person in my life, and she also met my grandfather on Fisk campus in the Henderson A gym. So yeah, it was a lot of reasons for me choosing Fisk as a whole, but I would like to say that my grandparents really did play a hand in where I chose to go to college. But getting into the topic of this story, I want to go a little bit back a couple of years post-COVID. After COVID, I had, moved into my own apartment, my own place, and unfortunately, I was in a few car accidents, and those car accidents resulted in me having seizures. With me having those seizures, I was directed to go to neurology, to see a neurologist. So naturally, as a Nashville native, you would go to either Centennial or Vandy or anything, a major hospital like that. With me, I went to Vanderbilt because all of my records were at Vanderbilt. I had been in Vanderbilt since I was a child, like at Monroe Carroll, So as I chose to go to Vanderbilt, they did a lot of studies on me. I want to say it was 2022. I was diagnosed with non-epileptic seizures due to stress and trauma that I withstood post-COVID, pre-COVID, all of that my entire life. I had pretty much been through a lot, but I still had seizures that they couldn't catch on camera after a week-long study. So They had prescribed me Lamotrigine at one point in time, and a few months after that study, I had actually moved. During that time of me moving, I moved to Huntsville, Alabama. I was homeless. I only knew of 3 people in the city, and that was my son's father, my best friend at the time, and her boyfriend at the time, her now husband. Congratulations to them. Haven't spoken to them in a while, and I do wish them the very best, because they really, really did a lot for me, and I will say that. So upon me moving to Huntsville, like I said, I was homeless. I had just kind of got into a relationship with my son's father, and we were dealing with each other up until, I want to say, a couple of days before I found out I was pregnant. And up until then, I was living in a hotel, and I am out of my car, and I had met a coworker, by the grace of God, who had a second apartment, and he willingly offered up that second apartment to me. Didn't know me from Adam. God bless him and his daughter. Really. Again, I would like to thank anybody who did play a hand in anything that I needed help with throughout this the story this time, because this is a really, really incredibly difficult time. So I had taken up the apartment, essentially. And I want to say the day into me having the apartment, actually it was that weekend, because that Sunday, all of the coworkers, we all kind of went out and had drinks before we were supposed to report back that Monday for the first day of training. So I woke up for that morning, first day of training, and I kind of fell off. And I'm, like, this, I don't get hangovers, I, at that point, had been drinking for like a year, maybe verifiably about a year and a half. But not, alcoholic, just, like social drinking. And I had never experienced a hangover a day in my life, so I knew something was off. Anyway, I get up and get dressed, and I'm on my way, and at that point, I'm living in Decatur. The apartment that I had got from my coworker was in Decatur, about 30-45 minutes from Huntsville, Alabama, and at that point, the training was about midway. So I'm on the phone with my mother on the way there on the interstate, and I'm talking to mom. I'm like, mom, I feel so weird. And as I'm telling my mom is like, Eriqua, you're pregnant. And I'm like, Immediately, I'm like, wait a minute. What? You ain't had to do all of that now. I was taken aback and I was surprised, I ain't gonna lie. But I didn't put it past myself. So, upon hearing that from my mother, and I never take my mom wrong for nothing. My mom looked at and said nothing wrong with me at that point. So, I spun that car around, got off the nearest exit, and went back home, took a pregnancy test, and lo and behold, I was pregnant. Okay. And everybody makes a joke about, your best friend, and like, oh, if I ever found out I was pregnant, we're going to do this, that, and fourth. That didn't happen. That did not happen, okay? For me, when I found out I was pregnant, I immediately cried. Called my best friend and cried. Called my mama back too, but I cried. And I prayed a lot. I prayed. I was like, God, if you take care of me, I will give my son back to you. Not like, but giving him back as in baptism, because I'm a Baptist girly. I grew up in a Baptist church. That's a very, 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 very important part of my life, okay? So I was like, God, if you just get me through this pregnancy, please, like, God, I'm by myself. Lord, I'm by myself. So anyway, I get it verified by one clinic, and then another clinic, they kind of tell me, no, I'm not pregnant. I'm glad I didn't go with that clinic, honestly, because if I didn't, I'd have been, I don't think Dominic would have been here, because that was a ball-faced lie, first of all. So shout out to the first clinic that verified when I was pregnant, when I got pregnant, and essentially, I was very, very early in my pregnancy when I caught it. I was like about 3 weeks, like just after conception. Like I just caught it. Like my body said, here you go. So, um, anywho, I started treating my body like a temple. Like it was that serious for me. Because I knew I was sick. I didn't have a neurologist down here. I didn't have the OBGYN down here. So I was trying to scrape and find it. But then again, I didn't have insurance. And so it was very, very hard. And I had to wait about 30 days for my insurance to kick into my job. However, you can't just, when your body is overloaded like that, you can't just, wait, say, hold on. You can't tell your body, just hold on. I can't deal with this right now. It just happens. So I was at work one night, and unfortunately I experienced a medical emergency where I had several seizures. And again, shout out to my friend at that point, and her husband, they were a godsend. Do appreciate them for staying with me. She was actually a nurse at that hospital too. So, and shout out to her. She's actually like getting her doctors right now. So big shout out to her. Period. Anywho, but they stayed with me. I stayed at the hospital for almost 7 days, and I was in communication with my family. At that point they had diagnosed me with epilepsy, and given my prior history with Vanderbilt, and already having seizures, and they already had tested me on two different medications, and I didn't have a good record with Keppra. So Keppra made me very, 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 very angry, okay? And I was very vocal about that. And one thing about me is I'm very, very vocal about anything medically wrong with me, okay? So I'm like, I don't like to feel off in the slightest, okay? So Keppra made me, and I'm a very kind-hearted person. All of my life I've been a kind-hearted person up until I found out I was bipolar. Keep in mind, bipolar. So, up until the point I found out I was bipolar, after everything and, dealing with borderline personality and this, that, and the fourth, Keppra just wasn't it for me. So, Lamotrigine ended up being my go-to. And that's actually what I had. So, I had extra Lamotrigine, then I was given Lamotrigine by Huntsville and Crestwood Medical Center in Huntsville. And so, my family had made the ultimate decision to bring me back because I was very, very sick at this point. Had 7 seizures in the hospital. They couldn't control it. I had to sit down off of my feet. I was working 12-hour shifts 5 days a week. Like midnight shifts from 6 to 6. And then picking up extra shifts. And then I had a dog. So yeah, my family decided that they were going to come and get me. And upon coming back, with me being an initial Tennessee resident, I got my insurance back fairly quickly, and it was already towards the end of the month, so it was going to come back on the first of the month anyway. So I was able to kind of get in with Vanderbilt again, neurology, but of course, if you know, the main centers don't really take care anymore, unless you're a child. I didn't know that until then. Anywho. So I got into Vanderbilt OBGYN out in Franklin, and they had noted that I was actually on Lamotrigine, and they referred me over to the neurology clinic over there, and it seems like right then everything started going downhill. Like, oh my God. So after my referral to Vanderbilt Neurology, I met with the neurologist, team of neurologists, whatever, and they all already had my paperwork. They had to get my paperwork from Huntsville, stating that I was also epileptic. However, I kept, asking them for Lamotrigine, and that's in my paperwork. I was asking for Lamotrigine, preferred Lamotrigine. Okay. Don't put me on a medication that's gonna make me sick. I don't like feeling sick. I was already going through. At this point, I'm like 10 weeks pregnant. I'm in my first trimester. What? I don't want to be any more sick than I already am. Just give me what I know, what my body already knows. So they refused that. They gave me oxcarbazepine. And oxcarbazepine, essentially, they gave me like 600 milligrams. 600 milligrams of oxcarbazepine. And my body hated it. I'm talking about, I was in a full body rash for almost 3 weeks. Head to toe. Inside and out. Like just rash. Hurt to touch anything, okay? I couldn't have skin. Like I said, I couldn't have skin on. I couldn't have clothes touching me. That's how bad it hurt. It hurt to lay down. Sheets, couldn't go to sleep. Showers were my best friend. Chamomile lotion did not work. Benadryl I was taking the entire time. Could not work. Did not. No, not for that. And they refused to take me off of it. So I went to Centennial where they actually took me off of it. I identified that it was my medication. And I went back to my neurologist and they put me on a different medication. Now, it seems like if I was allergic to oxcarbazepine, that they wouldn't put me on me with anything remotely the same as that. No, they put me on Oxtellar XR, which is the long-release tablet version of oxcarbazepine. And I really, really, really would like for somebody to make that make sense. If I'm allergic to oxcarbazepine, why would you give me Oxtellar, which is the same components that I'm allergic to? It doesn't make sense. Just doesn't. Refused to take that. They wouldn't fill it anyway. They ran out. So the third medication that they ended up trying me on was, I cannot pronounce it right, Zonisade. Zonisade, which was coated in peanuts. And also, like I said, I went to Vanderbilt my entire life. They also diagnosed me with a peanut allergy after I had broken out in hives from some peanuts in high school. And they gave me an EpiPen. Now, if you give me an EpiPen and tell me to stay away from peanuts for X amount of time, it would only make sense that you wouldn't give me a medication that is also coated in that same peanut oil, okay? So, anywho, she gave me that and told me directly, just take Benadryl. Take Benadryl. At this point, I am somewhere in my second trimester. This is spanned from my first trimester to my second trimester. This is about April, so beginning, I started there in about February, and then this is now about April. Why? It didn't make sense to me, and my body knew that. I knew that. My mother knew that because I didn't go to any doctor's appointment by myself. As a black woman in the state of Tennessee, there was no absolute way that I was about to go to a doctor's appointment by myself. And the rest of my story will tell you exactly why, okay? So I ended up discontinuing Vanderbilt altogether for me. That is where I ended up going to Centennial. Centennial kind of picked up my neurological care from that point on, and then partially my OB, but my OB was more so out in Diana Health in Smyrna. Hated the drive, loved Diana Health. Hated the drive, loved Diana Health. Okay, I absolutely love them. And then I love some of the Centennial neuroscience team and some of the OBGYN. Now some of them, okay, I will tell you why some. In a second, maybe in my second episode. So moving on, for the rest of my pregnancy, of course, I was in their care, not Vanderbilt, Centennial, and Diana Health, and it was fairly okay, actually. I was on Lamotrigine. I had a little bit of trouble taking it, only because, PTSD. You know how that works. Kind of scared, but I was taking Lamotrigine. Loved Lamotrigine, live, laugh, love Lamotrigine, and I am still on Lamotrigine to this day. Which is actually very funny because when I brought this up to my now neurologist, who is also affiliated with Fanny, he brought it up and he actually put it on my chart and was like, noted that I had preferred Lamotrigine and that I had been tested on a few medications. Now my son, who is 2.5, is experiencing behavioral and cognitive and developmental delays, and that can only be, well, not only, but that can be assumed to be part of the reason, the medications that they gave me, and I'll tell you why. So during phase 1, the first trimester, common clinical milestone is the neural tube closure and the initial brain vessel formation. So during that time, I was being given the excessive amount of Benadryl and that oxcarbazepine. In relation to this, neuroscientists can confirm that a high-dose sedative, high-dose sedative protocols during this window can disrupt neurogenesis, which is the birth of neurons. And neurons are cells of the brain and the nervous system. There are approximately like 100 billion of them, and they process and transmit information. They process and transmit information via electrical and chemical signals to the control sensory input, motor commands, thoughts, and memory. So, so taking these high-dose sedatives during fetal neurogenesis can cause increased apoptosis, so programmed cell death. They can cause long-term neurocognitive cognitive deficits. And the FDA warns, things like repeated or long-term use of these drugs in pregnant women can affect the fetal brain development. And these studies suggest that exposure can lead to reduced neurogenesis, or the number of neurons, in key brain structures, manifesting as cognitive dysfunction or learning deficits. Learning deficits. Things that we don't learn about a child until they hit 3 or 4, 5 or 6. So anywho, in the second trimester, we focus more on wiring of the social brain. And a clinical milestone will be the rapid synaptogenesis and the development of the temporal lobe, which is responsible for social processing and language. Now, in my case, the continued and unauthorized sedation to manage my body's immune distress due to the medication rather than treating the underlying medical error, that really impacted the disruption of neuronal migration, potentially shifting the threshold for future social interaction and adaptive skill gaps, which my son actually has displayed on his TEIS report. Now, I say all of this to say that I feel that my standard of care was negligent. It wasn't the same that someone else would have been given. And the standard of care is minimally competent care required by law to avoid negligent. And it's, considered the best practice. I feel like my switch of medication and my preference of medication was not taken into account. Honestly, and I'll say this because I'm a Black woman, and in the state of Tennessee, you are 3 times as more likely to face negligent care as a Black mother, as a birthing woman. I went to a lobbying event, and the event was talking about how, the maternal health rate is really, death rate is really, really high here in Tennessee. And I was thinking about Black women alone as a Black woman, or the amount of Black women that I've seen or heard, or their stories of what they've gone through during pregnancy or after birth, the complications of the things that they didn't receive that other people have received. It's just something to be very, very, very aware about. And if you're a Black woman, something to be cautious about. Again, that is why I never go to the doctor alone. Try to. So jumping a little bit ahead, fast forward, like I aforementioned, my son has been reviewed. He has been revealed to have a little bit of, not even a little, a lot of an adaptive skill and social-emotional benchmark gap, to a point where he scores very low very, very low on the scales. Like you only beat like the 4 and 9 other kids respectively for those categories. And in this portion, I would like to talk about behavioral teratology, which is the study of how prenatal and early postnatal exposure to environmental agents like drugs, chemicals, toxins, can cause like functional and behavioral abnormalities in children without actually causing a birth defect. And I feel like that's a common thing that a lot of people ask when they think of birth injuries and think of the first thing that you can visibly see or automatically like discover upon the birth of a child. But malpractice and injuries do go back as far as, the medications that a mother has received or the care that she received while pregnant. And I believe this is a very interesting topic for Tennessee, as we always like to push for the mother to keep carrying the child no matter what. And in my case, I, did carry my child, and then the care I received while I was carrying my child was not even the bare minimum. You didn't even want to give me what I asked for. You knew that would work. Decided to test me on a whole different other medications that actually hadn't been proven safe enough to test on women during pregnancy. And here I am now facing a diagnosis for my son because of that. But the behavioral teratology, like, it really focuses on like a lot of times alcohol and like heavy metals like mercury or other pharmaceutical agents like the medications that you're given in your pregnancy, and it like focuses on the effects, like the subtle long-term changes, including the intellectual disabilities or learning disabilities or motor functions and emotional and behavioral disorders in children. Again, this is not to be confused with the regular teratology that focuses on the structural abnormalities of, like the abnormalities that you could see, so like the malformations, whereas behavioral again focuses on functional. Behavioral teratology focuses mainly on the delayed manifestation. Excuse me for the train in the background. Sorry about that. That's what happens when you live right next to a train. But these injuries don't often show up until a child reaches like certain milestones. So like I said, usually around 2 to 4, when they start struggling with like social interaction and language and emotional regulation like my son does. And in my case, like exposing the brain to an unauthorized sedation, which is I'm naming the Benadryl Directive, instead of a stabilized medication that I asked for, Lamotrigine, during the first and second trimester, is a classic case of the behavioral teratogenic risk, So in one specific study by the name of the Maternal Outcomes and Neurodevelopmental Effects of Anti-Epileptic Drugs, or the MONEAD, the study investigated the link between low blood concentrations of anti-seizure medications like Lamotrigine during pregnancy and the risk of seizure clusters and subsequent neurodevelopmental delays in children. For me, where the medication was abruptly changed and lowered, where my Benadryl Directive comes into play, researchers identified a 6.07-fold increase or hazard ratio in the risk of certain neurodevelopmental deficits in offspring, but like age 3. And my son right now is 2.5. And I'm not just speculating on why my son has these delays. The MONEAD study literally shows a 6.07 hazard ratio for children whose mothers were taken off stabilized ASMs regimens during pregnancy. My neurologist notes from last week, admits they did exactly that to me. The science predicted this outcome. and the hospital practically ignored it. Now, with that being said, with him being 2.5, and this being now 3 years ago, I come upon the issue of the statute of repose. Not to be confused with the statute of limitations. The statute of limitations in Tennessee is 1 year. The statute of repose is 3 years. The statute of limitations is it starts when the injury is discovered or reasonably should have been discovered. It prevents a person, like a plaintiff, from sleeping on their rights to file a lawsuit. This often can be paused or extended due to different circumstances. The statute of repose starts when a specific action or event occurs. So for me, it was the mismanagement of my medication. This provides a firm deadline for the defendants to know that they can't be sued for something that happened years and years and years ago, you know? Now, in the case of a pregnant mother, and a child who has sustained injury that hasn't been able to be seen or discovered up until they're 3 after the statute of repose, where does that leave us? Because I have attorneys, doctors, people admitting that this was a deviation of the standard of care. And I'm looking at my son's test results and I'm remembering the things that I went through and I'm putting 2 and 2 together and I'm doing the research and it's all adding up. But here's where I'm asking. Where does this end? Because I know I can't be the only mother that has experienced this. And my son deserves just as much justice as somebody else who experienced a malformation. Because this was at the hands of a doctor who really didn't care about neither one of our lives, giving us a medication that I was allergic to. My body had went into a state of immunodistress for weeks on end. And now my son is suffering the consequences of your actions. So who's to be held responsible for this? To me, it seems like the state is waiting on the clock to run out. And I'm here to kind of not let that happen. So that's why I want to propose an extension of the statute of repose from 3 to 6 years in the case of prenatal injuries, like my son's. And before I let you guys go, I do want to remind you that this will be a part 2. Boy, there will be a part 2. Do I have a lot in store for you guys? Oh, yes, I do. This past week, I have been dealing with a slew of mental, health issues stemming from bipolar and epilepsy and my son and, coming to terms with this is how it's going to be. I had a code blue at the hospital while waiting on an EEG for the medication that they didn't want to give me. But I'm still on, but the weight of everything that I've been doing, the weight of the research, the weight of playing the waiting game with the results, and now the results are here, and it felt like, oh my God, the weight of the world is on me. And now I have to say something. But I code blue in Meharry Hospital the other day. Don't remember much, but what I can tell you is I don't want another mother to have to deal with anything that I've had to deal with the past 2 or 3 years. My son is perfect. He's healthy. My gosh. But I know that my son needs some help. And like I said, he's been seen by the TEIS, and I've gotten his papers back, and we're awaiting a review at Siskins, and I cannot stress this enough, how many people have been urging us to get seen at Siskins and get him tested for autism and ADHD, and trust me, that has been on the back of my mind, and I have not been able to prove it. Like, up until his pediatrician referred him, my neurologist said yes, and I started doing the research, because they don't diagnose until they're about 3, 4, 5. But what happens when your child is obviously exhibiting some of these behaviors, and it's clear that you were treated with some type of disrespect during your pregnancy, and this played a part in the development of his brain and the wiring of his brain and how he communicates with us. I have to do something, you know? So this is me grabbing my mic again and letting you guys know that this is not a race. This is a marathon, okay? And I want to invite you, any of my listeners, keeping in mind that this is National Autism Month, and the week of April 11th will be Black Maternal Healthcare Week. And in compliance with that, I will be hosting in March, April 15th. And if you're listening to this, I hope that you will stand in solidarity with me, my son, and any other mother that you know that has gone through something similar, where they have been explicitly denied things that they, asked for. And it's proving to have helped them. Or, you had a doctor that didn't care about you and prescribed you something that you were allergic to. And I know good and dang well that they have an override system. If it says I'm allergic to something and you give me something coded, it was supposed to come over their alert system. If it didn't, then something was wrong, okay? That's another issue that should have been tackled, okay? But anywho, I do want to invite anybody to the April 15th March. We are meeting up at Vanderbilt University Medical Center Plaza at 10 a.m. And we will be marching to the Capitol, where I will be meeting with the Tennessee Black Caucus to directly discuss some of the House bills and present my maternal manifesto for all of the mothers, Black mothers who have been through anything like I've been through, and for all of the children who don't have the voice to say something was wrong. I'm doing this for them. Stay tuned for the Maternal Manifesto to drop on Soft Life Hard Lessons podcast, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, all of it. My personal Instagram, that is at AUQIRE. Don't blow me up. Don't blow me up on there, okay? Look, I'm just a college student. I'm just the mom. I just be living, okay? This is my side hustle. But this is also something I very, very deeply care about. Also, before I leave you guys, I do want to make an announcement about a proposed research grant as well. So this research proposal, it is titled the Martin Beeman Research Proposal. It's named after myself and my grandmother and my grandfather, who met on his campus. The 2023 generation, a longitudinal study on the neurodevelopment impact of substandard obstetric medication protocols in Black maternal populations. The objectives of this would be to identify the Benadryl Directive prevalence in the Black community, to audit regional health systems to determine the frequency of off-label sedatives used in place to stabilize neurological regimens, to map the gestational timeline to correlate specific weeks of medication interruption with specific neurodevelopmental deficits in social interaction and adaptive behavior, and also to quantify the diagnostic gap, to analyze why the current 3-year legal clock expires before the manifestation of subclinical neural delays in this generation. The data produced from this research grant will serve as an evidentiary foundation for Article 5 of the foundations of, the 5 articles of maternal justice, the Maternal Manifesto. All right, guys, as I wrap this up, I do want to, again, invite you all to the Black Maternal Healthcare March on April 15th at Vanderbilt University Medical Center Plaza. And also stay tuned this week for episode 2, where I will be going into more detail about my son and how I knew and the process. So like serving the priesthood notices and drafting the research proposal and the 5 articles of maternal justice. Also stay tuned this week for me to be on, the story to hit the local news. I reached out to a few news stations, and I hope that you will tune in and hear my story. Hear me out. All right, thank you guys. Hope y'all have a great rest of your day. And this was Erica with the Soft Life Hard Lessons podcast. Checking out, and I'll see y'all in the next episode.